first night that I arrived, I thought that I had entered heaven. I walked up on the pier with all these gorgeous flowers everywhere on this lake, and there was this white haired man waiting to greet me with this beautiful smile. And I thought, that's St. Peter. I thought, I have had an accident on the way here and died, and I've gone to heaven, and this is St. Peter welcoming me into heaven.
I was born in Whiteville, North Carolina in 1918, and I've lived there and here at Lake Waccamaw, which is only 10 miles away, for 91 years. And I have, my family have been pharmacists of the past 3 generations and 2 more since then. And we are the oldest pharmacy family, I guess you might say, in North Carolina, having begun in 1872. My father was George Raymond McNeill, the son of Dr. John A. McNeill. He was born in 1878 and moved to Whiteville in 1901. My mother, Beulah Russell, was born over in Onslow County and went to business school in Virginia, came to Whiteville in 1903 to operate the railroad station, which is very odd for a lady. But she ended up in banking, and my mother and father were married in 1916, and I was the second of 4 children. I was born in 1918. My parents had 4 children. The first, Beulah Cameron McNeill, became a school teacher. I came along in 1918, and I lived in Whiteville and spent most of my time working in the drugstore until 1940, when the war started. I had graduated from the University of North Carolina as a pharmacist, and I had a brother born 2 years after I was, who was a very talented artist. He graduated from the Maritime Academy and became director of the North Carolina Maritime Museum. I had another brother born on my birthday, 7 years after I was. He is still living, and he had a wonderful, you might call it, life in the World War II, being the only survivor in a Marine group twice. He is still living. I graduated University of North Carolina in the School of Pharmacy in 1940, knowing that I must prepare myself for the armed forces. The day the war was declared, I tried to enlist in the V7 program, which was a substitute for the Naval Academy, but I discovered I was not tall enough. So for 4 months I stretched and finally gained the 2 inches I needed, and was enlisted in the Navy and made my way through midshipman school at Columbia University and was commissioned in early 1942. I had command of the first amphibious assault ship, other than the little ship-carried boats. This was the first LCT, And the second day, we left San Francisco bound for the Solomons in tow of a Liberty ship. Since we were 115 feet long, we we could not be lifted aboard a freighter, but we did well for 5 days and entered a hurricane and lost the ship. And I was picked up and taken to the South Pacific and served as a courier until my ship was rescued somewhere down off South America and towed back out to me. So I steamed it up to Guadalcanal and stayed there for a year and did all the over 100 landings in the Solomons. And while we were at Guadalcanal, we were used to transport men, material to the beaches, since there were no docks there. And in the hundreds of landings that we made, some were assault landings because we occupied only a small part of Guadalcanal. An interesting one was to take 300 troops and land them behind the Japanese lines. And we were attacked viciously several times by Japanese fighter aircraft on the way to the beach. But we made it okay and started into the beach to land the troops. And a man ran out on the beach in an American uniform. He was tattered and torn and bearded, waving me in. I suspected a trap, but went in, dropped my ramp, and the troops landed. This man walked aboard the ship, stared up on the bridge at me, and called my name. I was so stunned because he was George Watson, the captain of the football team at Chapel Hill the year I graduated. As soon as we released all our troops and equipment, the radio called and said there are 21 unidentified vessels in your vicinity. We suggest you make best possible speed for our protection at Guadalcanal. And it was almost dark, so we sure enough ran into the whole Jap fleet of destroyers, 23 in all. But it was dark enough that we, hugging the shore, we were able to evade them all. And we had a great evening, but we got safely back to our base at Guadalcanal and leaving the 21 of the 23 destroyers. The other two ran into a minefield. At the end of the first 6 months, I was promoted to lieutenant junior grade and given command of a squadron of 6 LCTs, and promptly went back to the United States to train troops for the European invasion. There I was given command of a group of 12 and promoted to lieutenant. And we finished the training program, organized another flotilla, and went back to the Pacific. This time we went through the Central Pacific, leaving Pearl, going through the Marshalls, the Gilberts, and up to Guam and finally to the Philippines. One day I was entering the harbor at Tulagi in the Solomons, and a long line of PT boats was leaving the harbor. Tulagi was a small harbor, but all the PT boats and all the small craft harbored there. So I saw a classmate who was skipper of one of the PT boats. He said, "Come to see me tonight." So I went back in the harbor today, and when the PB boats came in, I went to his tent, and there was no bottom of mud, and we were down to our knees. And I met the other PT boat officers, among which was a Jack Kennedy. Well, I felt sorry for him, so the next morning I was asked to deliver gasoline in barrels to Henderson Field over at Guadalcanal. So I took 900 barrels over there, but we separated them with boards. So that night I took all the lumber back to the little island Macombo where the PT boats were, and the CBs built walkways and bottoms for all the tents. And the next time I came in, a young ensign came over and said, "See Mr. McNeill." And he said, "My name is Jack Kennedy. I want to thank you for bringing those boards back and getting us up out of the mud." Well, that day we had a terrible air attack, horrendous thing. And after it was over, we're all standing around the deck, reminiscing about we shot down, and looked up and saw 10 coming right at us. Well, it was almost comical. Everyone just shot it to pieces. It just became disintegrating and flew into the side of the mountain right above us. The pilot ejected. So about a week later, a native came by and said, "I know where the man is. He parachuted and his plane is on a treetop." Well, I didn't remember who went with us. We followed the native up, and there was U-0, and had a tail section that was torn off with Japanese writing on it. So one of the fellows climbed the tree and tore off a piece, and broke it in two, and gave each one a piece. Well, years later, one of the officers who had been a lawyer in Boston was Jack Kennedy's campaign manager when he ran for the House. He went in his office, and there was this piece of metal. He said, "Where did you get that?" He said, "Don't you remember? I climbed the tree and got this piece of zero down and gave it to you and McNeill and the car." When I came home from the Navy, my brother arrived at the same time. And in a short while, we decided we wanted to become involved in scouting. Now, we didn't have any children at that time, so we organized a Sea Scout ship, and I called it the Sea Scout ship Walk'em. And we called the Navy and asked if they had a this boat, and they called back a day or two later and said, "Yes, we have a 40-foot boat in Southport we're going to destroy. You can have it. Has no engine." So we towed it up, the Coast Guard towed it up to a dock with a crane, and a big truck from Whiteville volunteered to go down and bring it back and put it in a warehouse, and returning sailors totally rebuilt it, put an engine in it, and we launched it on the lake. Well, we found uniforms for all the boys from returning sailors, and had quickly became the national flagship rating competition. We drilled the boys intensely. So the Navy said, take them down to Jacksonville to the Naval Air Station, and we got a destroyer down there. We'll take them out to sea and give them some sea experience. Well, as they marched across the base, the admiral saw them, and in amazement he said, "What is that?" They explained to him it was a group of Scouts, Sea Scouts, and the leaders had been naval officers, and the precision of their marching just amazed him. So he stopped them and had them pose in front of the administration building. And the boys, everywhere they went, they took great pride in their ability to march. And so we soon became the national flagship, rating I guess they give to other areas. But for 5 years we stayed in Sea Scouting until we had boys of our own beginning to grow up, and we changed to Boy Scouting.
I'm Woody Wayne from Lake Waccamaw. I've known Johnny all my life, 65, 68 years. Johnny has meant a lot to the community. He's meant an awful lot to the Boy Scout program for the Cape Fear Area Council. Through the years, he has taken Scouts to Alaska. He has participated with the youth program here at his pier at Lake Waccamaw by having it available for Scouts to have their Eagle ceremonies. He has really done a tremendous lot for the youth program in Columbus County and the state of North Carolina through the scouting program.
When we got the boat back to Whiteville on the bed of a big truck, we slid it into a tobacco warehouse which had not been used. And returning sailors, a lot of them were shipbuilders, ship fitters, they totally rebuilt the boat. Some doctor in Wilmington gave us an engine, and we made it navigable. And for 5 years, the Sea Scout ship would make voyages around the lake and doing all sorts of things. And one day, a huge encampment of Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and so forth came, and they needed to move them across the lake. So the boat was large enough we could take 125 boys in one trip. We stayed in shallow water, well, it wasn't over their head, and the boat served a great purpose. On weekends, we would have our friends come down. We could go off and have picnics, but we anchored it one time in shallow water right out here, and a hurricane came, and although the anchor held, it hit the bottom and opened the seams, and we could never make it float again. So we gave it away to a fellow who was not able to walk, and his father rebuilt it and put it on the Cape Fear River, and the fellow, it was big enough he could live aboard it. So he had a dock, and the fellow spent the rest of his life living aboard the old Sea Scout ship. When I went back to the Pacific, I went across the Pacific through the Marshalls and Gilberts to Guam and eventually to the Philippines. I would receive letters from my father telling me what ship my high school classmates would be on. So being in operations, I could easily find the ship. I would go visit my friends from home, and they all told me all these news stories. And I asked them, how did you know all this? Well, Margaret Powell writes to me. So after the third or fourth time hearing about Margaret Powell, I just realized I knew her family, but I didn't know her. So the day I got back home, opened the store, I walked across the street to her office and introduced myself. A year later, we were married. We had 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. She was just the world's greatest mother. She raised really, in my opinion, remarkable children. They've all been great kids. And as they grew up, I realized they needed to be in scouting. So I became a scoutmaster, and it was just a wonderful experience. I decided to take them on a great adventure, and so we bought an old, sort of beat-up station wagon, put camping gear on it, and drove to Fairbanks, Alaska. It was an unpaved road at that time. We hired a bush plane to fly us up over the Arctic Circle and leave us, so the boys could experience 24 hours of daylight. We returned the next year. I took them on a expedition to Yucatan in Mexico to study the Mayan ruins. The next year, they were getting in college, so we decided to make a great march. So I took my 36 boys to Martinsville, Virginia, and the families took them up and put them on the road. The next week, they picked us up in Chesterfield, South Carolina. Every boy finished. They walked all the way across North Carolina, camped every night, cooked their meals. All the distinguished people came to visit them. The governor even came, had breakfast with them one morning. And all the boys made an eagle, and in the troop of Boy Scouts, 55 became Eagle Scouts, and over the years, it was a challenge. They knew when they came in that troop, they were expected to go all the way, and it's one of the fondest memories that I have was about all those boys working their way up through all the merit badges and all the projects to become Eagle Scouts.
Hi, I'm Ben Douglas. I've known Johnny since 1960, I believe it was, possibly 59. I'm not sure whether I met him in 59 when we moved here. But in 60, I became a scoutmaster of the local troop, and John was scoutmaster over at 513 over in Whiteville. And we became good friends and great competitors. In that our troops were battling at camporees and that sort of thing to see who was going to be the best troop at that particular camporee. But over the years, John and his great buddy Frank Galt, Frank was a scoutmaster over in Whiteville also, so the three of us were deep into competition. John having a humongous troop, sometimes as many as 50, 55 boys, while my biggest troop was about 20. But he had a lot more adult help than I did, but he always had something new coming along, including his trip with some of his scouts and sons all the way to Alaska.
When we left Alaska, I had 6 boys, and we were all in uniform. A man approached us and said, I'm a fur trader, and I have some seconds. Now let me give you some souvenirs. So he gave each boy 3 or 4 skins, and we put them in the station wagon and began our journey home. Well, we got down into Montana, and the car broke down, and we had to spend the day or so in Augusta, Montana, having it repaired. No one would let us pay them, so we drove away, and we heard a siren. It was a game warden, and we had on the top of the station wagon, we had a few little small racks of animals. He said, what are you doing with those little toy things? And I said, well, the boys have souvenirs. He said, follow me. We went to a ranch, and he was the game warden. And he gave each boy 4 huge antlers, a mule deer, a elk, a moose, and, you know, a goat or something. And we had this enormous pile of souvenirs. Well, and when we drove off, the station wagon caved in. The roof caved in, so we went to a garage and had it jacked up and put posts in it. And we arrived at the entrance to Yellowstone, and the superintendent says, I can't let you go in the park. They never let you out. Didn't think you took all this there. So we asked them if we inventoried it and they assigned it, and we had this when we entered, they could call the other end and get us out. Well, it worked, but we were besieged by curiosity seekers about where on earth you get all these racks, these horns. Well, we passed on through the cities coming home, and I remember so well in St. Louis, every stoplight, just 100 people would come up around the car wondering where you got this huge bunch of animal horns, and each boy had 4. So they all so proud now that in their homes you can find the souvenirs of their journey to Alaska. When I had 5 kids, we often talked about this amusement park in California, Disneyland. So we decided we would go. My wife never cared a lot about traveling, but she wanted to do that. So I went to the bank and to borrow the money. And he says, that's an awful lot of money for a vacation. I said, yes, we need to buy a new air-conditioned car. We need to hire a pharmacist for 5 weeks or something, and have money to travel on. And when I come back, I'll sell the car and bring you the money, and I'll pay you the balance within a few months. So we bought a new Oldsmobile air-conditioned station wagon, and we drove down. Well, we went down into New Mexico. We had no plan, just rambling. And we would stop during the middle of the day and let the children run and play, and have supper and go to a motel at night. We had camping gear on top, but we seldom used that, only in national parks. We got to Disneyland, and there was a motel at the entrance. When I told the man I was from North Carolina and we had borrowed one of my brother's children. We had 6 kids in the car, and he couldn't believe that we had driven with 6 children. My wife was just as calm as everything. So he just sort of adopted us as my. Eventually, we had 6 children, and as they grew up, and the oldest one went to college, to a junior college, and then transferred to Chapel Hill and became a pharmacist. The second boy grew up and went to state and became an engineer. When the first one finished and passed the boards as a pharmacist, he confided in me that he wanted his own store, and he asked me if I would loan him money to buy one, which I did. And he, in an adjoining town, a neighboring town, he began a drugstore. Well, he realized how tough it was to make it go. But he was very innovative. He soon became adding other departments, medical equipment, and in just 2 or 3 years he had 50 employees. And the second boy uh, was an engineer, and he worked for EPA, and he was in got his master's at Georgia State, and came home, and the two boys got to talking, and they formed a company and moved to Wilmington. Well, they had sold this company for a large sum of money, and they had plenty of capital, so they began building their idea of a great retirement center. And during the construction, they had nothing to do, so a man, an accountant, came to see him and said, "There's a little company for sale over here. You boys might, it's a research company, you might be interested." They went over, and it was pharmaceutical product development. And the owner was a classmate of Sanders at Chapel Hill. And he explained he'd been made a great offer by Glaxo, Burroughs Wellcome, and Research Triangle. So they said, "Well, we'll be interested in buying it, but you take the money in the bank as a down payment and agree that the profits that we make from research that you send us, we can pay you off for that." So they actually bought PPD and didn't pay anything for it. And they made a number of wise investments and began building nursing homes, and I believe they have 5 Liberty companies now. Like Liberty Commons is large nursing homes, Liberty Medical, Liberty Home Care, Liberty Nursing, and each one of the children would come into the business and take over one of the Liberty companies, and they have worked together so beautifully. They all graduated from college. Every boy was an Eagle Scout. All the girls went all the way in Girl Scouting, and so it's a very rewarding life to have your children around you, and I'm just the proudest old man on earth. When I came home from the war, they were digging the canal and developing this property, and I immediately bought this because this is where I camped so much as a child. And I wanted a home, but I couldn't afford another home here. So one of the foresters said, "We have a stand of Atlantic white cedar in the green swamp that we don't want, so you can have it." And I hired a logger to go cut the trees. He called me and he said, "How much of the tree do you want?" He said, "I can sell the ends for fence post." So he did, and got all his money. So when he delivered the logs on this lot, I didn't owe him anything, but I did owe the paper company. So I went to see Jim Laddie, the president, and I said, "How much do I owe you?" And he said, "Well, how many logs did you get?" I said, I don't know, it was 7 truckloads. He said, "Oh, that's okay, it'd be $7, $1 a truckload." Well, my brother, in the meantime, had become a port director at a Motor City, and he was importing mahogany from Amazon, and had a huge surplus. Well, it was out in the weather, so the federal judge told him, "You got to auction it off and distribute the money among all the people that bought it." But there was a pile on top that had been exposed to the weather, and there was a empty truck from Whitewell there. So I put 10,000 feet of mahogany boards, all course, rough, on the truck and sent them to me. So I paid the driver $10 to wait to unload it. So by that time, I had the logs and I dug to build all the cabinets and everything, and I only paid $10. So the children had visited a lot of log cabins. We found the stone up in the middle of the state, went up with the dump truck, brought that down. So we largely built it ourselves. Now we had friends who were architects and builders who would come by and give us advice about different things, and we hired day labor from time to time. But I always wanted to live on the lake, and I just found such great joy in Lake Waccamaw. It's chemically so unique. We've accumulated scientific papers over the years, and it's my love for flowers. I guess I inherited from my parents, but when I built 2 piers and finally decided I was going to build a flower pier, I wanted to have boxes of flowers everywhere, just thousands of flowers. And so in 1986, we built this pier, and I had a architect who had been one of my Boy Scouts. His father was a scientist. He was a great friend. So I had a lot of great help. And so now we have 7,000 moonflowers out there. And since my wife was confined to a nursing home, I moved down here, and so I could get up and water every morning. And people came and liked the flowers, so my neighbor Frank Galt liked to cook. So we thought we would have dinner and would raise money for the museum and the library. And it went over so well, we decided we'd do it every Friday night. So for the last 12 years, the public is invited to dinner every Friday night from May through October. And they leave a little contribution, which is equally divided between the museum and the library. For years, Frank cooked, but his back began to bother him, so people bring food now, and we raise several $1,000s every year, and average 60-some people. But we have great celebrations like the 4th of July. Since we came home from the war, we read the Declaration of Independence every 4th of July. We have hundreds of guests. And now there's so many people, there's no parking, so 30 or 40 party boats come out and anchored around. They have a big PA system so they can hear the reading of the Declaration and all participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. We have hundreds of flags we've accumulated over the years. So all the little children of the neighborhood are flag bearers, and you see that our great mast with flags of our friends and foreign. We have most of the foreign flags, and so when we have visitors from foreign countries, we can fly their flag.
I'm Frank Galt, G-A-U-L-T. I was born and raised here at Lake Waccamaw 87 years ago. Hey, John is 91, I believe. John is 4 years older than I am. And Johnny lived in Whiteville. Of course, I told you I live here. He was down here to take most of the time in the summertime. So that's as much growing up together as we did was in the summer. But then the war came along, and I guess before and during the war, John and I got involved in scouting. He had a scout troop in Whiteville, and I had a scout troop here in Lake Waccamaw. So we were friendly rivals, and I had it for 19 years. I don't know how long. John probably had his longer than that. But then the war came along and we got separated. And then shortly after the war, 2 or 3 years later, I got called back in the Navy for the Korean conflict. So I was gone 2 more years. So since then, though, we've been pretty close friends. He still spends a lot of time down here at the lake, and I know Johnny came to my house one day, I think 10, 15 years ago, knocked on the door, and he says, "Tell me I can't do it." I said, "What in the world are you talking about?" I said, anyway, he said, says, "We don't have anything to do around here on the weekends, especially on Friday nights." And he said, "I was thinking about let's see if we can't get people interested in coming down to the pier here on Friday nights, and we'll have a party. Would you mind cooking for us?" I love to cook. I cooked all the time. And I said, "Cook what? What are you talking?" He said, "Well, how about just some fish and hush puppy?" I said, "That's fine. I'll get a whole bunch of catfish. So we'll have fried catfish and hush puppies." And we had that. We had a few people to come. That was the beginning of Friday nights. It sort of caught on. People did start coming, and as you know, probably it's like a church supper. Everybody brings a plate or a platter or whatever food, and no charge. We all put it together. Well, Johnny built what we call a treasure chest, about 2 feet high, pretty good sized box. Had a slot in it. As we told people that no charge for this is a volunteer thing. And by the way, any money that's collected, Johnny won't get it, and I won't get in it. Half of it goes to the Lake Waccamaw Depot Museum, and the other half goes to the Lake Waccamaw Library. And that's what it's been ever since.
Well, there's no way you can put in a few words what you know about John McNeill. And I've known him for a long, long time. You can see how old I am, and you know how old he is. And one of my favorite things about him, though, is you can walk out here on the pier, and he's out here most of the time. You don't usually see him stirring around and fixing things. He may be watering, but he is just as calm. And if you look at all this beauty around you, you know that it doesn't happen by itself. But he never gets in what I call a sweat. And I stay in a sweat and I never accomplish anything. But he never gets in one, and he accomplishes everything. He has the gift of making every one of us old girls feel like we're his girl. And his children are a legacy that we all share his pride in, and they are such fine citizens too, and we're lucky to have them. But Lake Waccamaw is especially lucky because everything they do and everything he does is for this community. He doesn't know how to do anything but give, and plus that, he's a lot of fun.
When I came home from the war, the county health doctor was a close friend of my father's, and he asked me if I would serve on the Board of Health. And so the next election, I was appointed, and I served a year, and they elected me chairman, which I served for 27 years. I thoroughly enjoyed seeing the eradication of hookworm, improvement in our diet, things that the health department was able to have a part I I was never interested in politics, but I served many local offices. For example, I am the county historian without pay. I I don't really do a lot except I record all the events that may be of historical interest. My journals are numerous with other subjects, and I've written a couple of histories and involved now in a family history. Also, uh, students from the universities come here to study the lake. The lake is unique chemically and has a lot of diverse populations. So the students always send me copies of their thesis. So I have accumulated all their papers that I could find. So finally hired a lady for 3 years part-time to search the libraries of all the universities and scientific societies in North Carolina and surrounding states. So I think we have a collection of all the natural history, which we broadened into local history, social history, and so we have all the printed material about Lake Waccamaw. We love the birds, we love all the nature here. We eagerly look for new species. Students who just came here were always told that the attic up here was their place they could spend the night anytime without asking. My doors are never locked. So we still have, Diane Larson came here as a freshman, and she knows she can always come here and find a bed, and she doesn't have to ask anybody or wake anyone up. So I still have kids who are now professors or adults who came here as children and did their college research work. So I'm flattered to death that people feel at home. And so like I say, every Friday we have all these guests. We have lots of celebrations. We have weddings, we have high school reunions, and so I feel like my love for this place can be shared with all these people, and they feel free to come, and because they're just courtesy, they always tell me, but they know they can just appear at any time. I want people, my friends or anyone who wants to be married or see the flowers, they feel welcome. They don't have to ask. They drive in the parking lot, and like one day last summer, 2 cars drove up and said, "Can we get married right now?" And they walked out of the pier, married, got back in the car and left. And so I felt good about it. I felt, well, maybe they feel the way I want them to feel. They're welcome to come enjoy my plants and the nature, the beauty, and the just mystique of Lake Waccamaw. But our 4th of July celebrations have grown, and we have often invited prominent North Carolinians to read the Declaration. Governor Hunt sent me membership in the Order of the Longleaf Pine, which is the highest honor the state can give. Governor Sanford, who was a classmate of mine at Chapel Hill, was fascinated with bringing the battleship home. So I was very active in getting the battleship in, and chaired a local committee to raise funds. He made me an honorary admiral. Now, he made other people, but most of them much older, so I don't believe there are many of them left. But he made me an admiral in the North Carolina Navy. Now, I have used that to great advantage. I have been in foreign countries, and I can walk up to a warship and show my ID card, an admiral in the North Carolina Navy, and they usually call side boys and give me a tour of the ship. As a small boy, I unfortunately had a speech defect. I was a stutterer. I was always embarrassed to speak to people. But I realized one day that when I stood up, it was not a problem. So I volunteered to enter the recitation declamation contest. When I got on the stage, everybody was laughing because you couldn't talk. But I found I had overcome it when I faced the crowd. I love people, poor people. I was very modest and probably hesitant about some things. But in the war, I became almost radically patriotic. I was rejected 16 times in the Navy, but I was determined I was going to fight for my country. I love America. I love American history. I have studied the struggles of our democracy, and I cherish what we have won. We're a country that is envied by the world. I've been blessed with the ability to travel, and of the 83 countries I've been in, I just think America is just the greatest thing that's happened on our world. I want to participate in all patriotic things. I fly my flag every day. I love America. I love its people. I think that we have solved so many of the problems that plague the world based on race. I respect all the races. They have their great qualities. America is a melting pot of all those things. I just love America.
Thanks to everyone. Y'all see. A free and independent nation And they all agreed that this act was so important. They would sign their lives away by signing this document, because they knew if this rebellion failed, they would pay with their lives and so with their families. But the idea of this country was bigger than that. They were willing to risk it all. Today, if we go forward and we think about things that are important to us, we have people out there every day standing up for this country, willing to risk it all. If you look at the 4 flags flying from the yard arms, those are the 4 flags of the armed forces of the United States. We'll never forget the prices paid for freedom. It is never going to be a cheap price.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposable to suffer while evils are sufferable. And for the support of this declaration, with firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
My name is David Scott. Thank you, gentlemen. We moved or bought a house in Lake Waccamaw about 30 years ago after we were married, and I got to know John McNeill then, and I tell my wife very frequently that when I grow up I want to be just like John McNeill. I admire him in so many different ways. He is I think, I've tried to analyze why I admire him so much, and I think it's because he's so incurably curious about everything and everybody, and that's what I want to be. I think that's what keeps him young. He's an old guy now. Most people his age would be in an assisted living home with a walker, and John still has that sparkle in his eye, and he's an inspiration. He's exactly where and what I want to be when I get that age, and he is a wonderful role model for me, and I'm so glad that my daughter got to know him. He's the guy I just wish there were more of John McNeills in the world, because he's a wonderful man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.